Billionaire CEO accidentally saw her changing on a CCTV camera, and one glance changed everything. "I make it a point to understand the people who work for me," Dominic Blackwood said, his penetrating gaze never leaving her face, especially those in positions of trust. Eliza Morgan felt her spine stiffen as she sat across from one of the most powerful men in the hospitality industry. "So you've been investigating me? I prefer to call it due diligence. And watching me change my clothes on security cameras. Was that due diligence too, Mr. Blackwood?" The billionaire's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "That was unexpected, but it revealed something I rarely see in this world of carefully crafted personas." "And what exactly did it reveal?" she challenged, refusing to be intimidated despite the hammering of her heart. His voice dropped to a tone that seemed to resonate through her very bones. "Authenticity, Ms. Morgan. True dignity under pressure. The kind that can't be faked or taught, and the very quality I've been searching for. Have you ever wondered what happens when your most vulnerable moment becomes the catalyst for an unexpected opportunity? When being seen at your worst somehow reveals your best. This is the story of how one accidental glance changed everything for two people who never should have met. If you've ever felt exposed, misjudged, or underestimated, this story will resonate with you. Give this video a like if you believe that sometimes our most unguarded moments can lead to our greatest transformations. I'm Mr. Harrison, and today I'm sharing the remarkable story of Eliza Morgan and Dominic Blackwood. Two people whose lives collided in the most unexpected way, proving that sometimes it's not the carefully constructed image we present to the world that matters, but the authentic self we reveal when we think no one is watching. The security monitor flickered in the corner of Dominic Blackwood's vast office, one of 12 screens displaying feeds from his flagship property, the Lumiere Hotel. The soft blue glow illuminated his features as he scrolled through the security protocol report on his tablet. At 42, Dominic had built the Blackwood Hospitality Group from a single struggling hotel inherited from his father into an international luxury brand with 37 properties across 4 continents. His success came from attention to detail, uncompromising standards, and an almost supernatural ability to predict market trends before they emerged. The recent security breach at his Seattle property had been minor, a guest accessing another's room due to a key card malfunction, but Dominic didn't believe in minor problems. In his experience, small oversights were merely symptoms of larger vulnerabilities, which was why he was personally reviewing the security systems across all his properties, starting with the crown jewel, the Lumiere. His finger swiped across the tablet, cycling through camera feeds methodically. Lobby, clear. Grand staircase, clear. East corridor, clear. Staff areas. A flicker of movement on monitor 6 caught his attention. His finger paused, expanding the feed just as a young woman entered the staff locker room, clearly distressed. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, though several strands had escaped to frame a face that showed signs of strain. Her hotel uniform, the tailored charcoal dress with the signature Lumiere gold piping that he had personally approved in the last design overhaul, was soaked down the front, clinging uncomfortably to her slender frame. Dominic's first thought was professional. A staff member in disarray was unacceptable in a 5-star establishment. His second thought was to note that she was new. He didn't recognize her from his regular visits to the property. His third thought never fully formed, because the woman began to unbutton her uniform dress, clearly intending to change. Professional ethics kicked in immediately. He moved to switch the feed, to give this employee the privacy she deserved. But before his finger completed the motion, the woman froze, her gaze lifting to the small camera mounted in the corner of the room. For 3 heartbeats, she stared directly at the lens, and through some trick of technology or fate, it felt to Dominic as though she was looking straight at him. Her expression transformed from shock to something more complex. A mixture of embarrassment, anger, and then, surprisingly, resolve. Instead of covering herself or turning away, she straightened to her full height. With deliberate movements, she finished changing into a dry uniform she retrieved from her locker, her actions neither hurried by shame nor performative in defiance. There was simply a dignity in her movements, an ownership of the moment that struck Dominic as extraordinary. When she finished, she looked once more at the camera, gave a small, ironic nod as if acknowledging an unseen audience, and walked out with her head high. Dominic sat back in his custom leather chair, oddly unsettled. In that brief interaction with a surveillance camera, the woman had displayed more authentic presence than most people he encountered in months of business dealings. There had been something almost challenging in her final glance. Not insubordination exactly, but a clear message. I know my worth regardless of who might be watching. His private line rang, breaking the moment. The caller ID displayed Vivian Mercer, his longtime executive assistant. I was just about to call you, he answered, his voice betraying none of his inner turmoil. You have the board on standby for the conference call in 5 minutes, Vivian reminded him. And Mr. Hargrove has called twice about the Singapore property. He says it's urgent. It's always urgent with Hargrove, Dominic replied, already shifting mental gears back to business. Tell the board I'll be on in 3, and schedule Hargrove for tomorrow morning, not before. Of course. Anything else? Dominic's gaze drifted back to the now empty locker room on the monitor. Yes. Find out who the new night manager is at the Lumiere. The one who started this week. Any particular reason? Vivian asked, her tone professional but curious. Just keeping tabs on key personnel, he replied smoothly. The Lumiere is our flagship. I should know who's running it when most of our guests are sleeping. Eliza Morgan's hands were still shaking slightly as she emerged from the locker room, though she'd be damned if she'd let anyone notice. 6 years of working her way up through the hospitality industry had taught her that perception was everything, especially for a woman trying to advance in management. The last thing she needed was to appear rattled on her 4th day as night manager at the prestigious Lumiere Hotel. Everything all right, Ms. Morgan? Asked Ramon, the concierge, his expression concerned. Perfectly fine, she replied with the warm, professional smile she had perfected over years of customer service. Just a small accident with the water delivery. Nothing that can't be fixed with a change of clothes. What she didn't mention was the moment of horrified realization that she might have been caught on security cameras in a state of undress. The Lumiere was famously meticulous about its surveillance, a selling point for the high-profile guests who valued both luxury and safety. She'd been briefed on the comprehensive system during her orientation just 4 days ago. What she hadn't considered was that the staff areas would be monitored too, though it made perfect sense. A hotel that catered to celebrities, business moguls, and the occasional foreign dignitary would naturally want to ensure that those with access to private spaces were themselves being observed. The question was, who was watching? Some bored security guard? The hotel manager? Or worse, had the feed been automatically recorded for later review? Eliza pushed the thought aside as she approached the front desk. This job at the Lumiere was her big break after years of working at progressively better establishments. Night manager at a flagship luxury hotel was a significant step up from her previous position, and at 34, she was acutely aware that opportunities like this didn't come along often for someone without connections or an Ivy League hospitality degree. Ms. Morgan, there's a situation in the Sapphire Suite, said Aiden, the front desk clerk, his expression suggesting it wasn't a routine matter. Mr. Delaney is insisting that his room isn't adequate for his needs. Eliza suppressed a sigh. The Sapphire Suite was the second most luxurious accommodation in the hotel, priced at $7,500 per night. Inadequate was not a word typically associated with its 2,800 square feet of custom-designed opulence. I'll handle it, she assured Aiden, already mentally preparing for the delicate dance of placating an entitled guest without compromising the hotel's standards or dignity. It was a skill she had honed to near perfection. 3 hours, 1 relocated guest, 2 complimentary champagne services, and a minor kitchen crisis later, Eliza finally had a moment to breathe. The lobby was quiet. The overnight staff was handling their duties efficiently, and the gentle piano music floating through the atrium created the perfect atmosphere of subdued luxury. She was reviewing the arrival list for the following day when her hotel-issued phone chimed with a message. The sender was listed simply as V. Mercer, Executive Office. The message was brief and formal. Ms. Morgan, Mr. Blackwood would like to meet with you tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the corporate headquarters. A car will be sent to collect you at 9:30. Please confirm receipt of this message. Eliza stared at the screen, her heart suddenly pounding. Dominic Blackwood, the Dominic Blackwood, wanted to meet with her? The reclusive billionaire owner of the entire Blackwood Hospitality Group, a man known for his brilliant business mind and exacting standards, rarely met with anyone below executive level. And he certainly didn't summon new night managers to his office without reason. With a sinking feeling, Eliza knew exactly what that reason must be. Someone had reported the locker room incident, or worse, Blackwood himself had somehow seen it. Either way, her dream job was likely over before it had truly begun. For a moment, she considered her options. She could claim illness, buy herself time to figure out a response. She could preemptively resign, salvage some dignity. Or she could face whatever was coming head-on, the same way she had faced that camera, with composure and self-respect. Her fingers hovered over the phone for only a second before typing. Message received. I will be ready at 9:30. Whatever Dominic Blackwood had to say to her, Eliza Morgan would meet it standing tall. She had worked too hard, overcome too much to do anything else. If you're wondering what happens when a billionaire CEO calls you to his office after witnessing your most vulnerable moment, stay with me. This story takes an unexpected turn that reveals how true character is shown not in our carefully crafted public personas, but in those unguarded moments when we think no one is watching. The Blackwood corporate headquarters occupied the top 10 floors of a gleaming tower in the heart of the financial district. The building itself seemed to embody its owner's philosophy, innovative yet timeless, impressive without being ostentatious, every detail serving both form and function. Eliza had dressed carefully in a charcoal suit that projected professionalism while acknowledging the gravity of meeting with the company's founder. The car, a sleek black Mercedes with discreetly tinted windows, had arrived precisely at 9:30, driven by a courteous but reserved man who introduced himself only as Thomas. Now, as the private elevator whisked her to the 50th floor, Eliza focused on controlling her breathing. She had spent half the night rehearsing what she might say, how she would explain the locker room incident with dignity, perhaps even turn it into a constructive conversation about staff privacy protocols. The elevator doors opened silently to reveal a reception area that defied corporate stereotypes. Instead of the expected stark minimalism, the space featured warm wood tones, comfortable seating areas, and walls adorned with stunning photography from locations around the world. All Blackwood properties, she realized. Ms. Morgan, a tall, elegant woman with silver-streaked dark hair, approached with an outstretched hand. I'm Vivian Mercer, Mr. Blackwood's executive assistant. Thank you for coming on such short notice. Of course, Eliza replied, shaking the offered hand. It's a pleasure to meet you. Mr. Blackwood is finishing a call. Would you care for coffee or tea while you wait? Coffee would be wonderful, thank you. Black. Vivian nodded approvingly, as if Eliza had passed some small test. Please make yourself comfortable. I'll let you know when he's ready. Left alone in a small but beautifully appointed waiting area, Eliza sipped the perfectly brewed coffee and tried to quiet her mind. Whatever was coming, she would face it with the same resilience that had carried her through every other challenge in her life. 15 minutes later, Vivian reappeared. Mr. Blackwood will see you now. Following the assistant down a corridor lined with more stunning photography, Eliza mentally prepared herself for the meeting ahead. She had never seen Dominic Blackwood in person, though his reputation preceded him. Business magazines described him as brilliant but demanding, innovative yet traditional in his expectations of excellence. The few published photos showed a man with intense dark eyes and the kind of features that improved with age, handsome in a way that suggested character rather than conventional beauty. None of that preparation mattered when Vivian opened the door to his office and Eliza found herself face to face with the man himself. Dominic Blackwood stood as she entered, a courtesy she hadn't expected. He was taller than she had imagined, his presence filling the vast office in a way that had nothing to do with physical size and everything to do with an innate authority that seemed to radiate from him. His dark hair was lightly threaded with silver at the temples, and his eyes, a deep blue that bordered on indigo, fixed on her with unsettling intensity. "Ms. Morgan," he said, his voice deeper than she had expected, with a resonance that seemed to bypass her ears and vibrate directly against her sternum. "Thank you for coming. Please have a seat." As Eliza moved toward the chair he indicated, she noticed something unexpected, a flicker of what almost looked like uncertainty in his expression. It vanished so quickly she might have imagined it, replaced by the composed demeanor of a man accustomed to controlling every situation. "I imagine you're wondering why I asked to meet with you," he began, returning to his seat behind a desk that, like everything else in his orbit, managed to be both impressive and tasteful. "I have my suspicions," Eliza replied, deciding that directness was her best approach. "If this is about what happened in the staff locker room yesterday, I'd like to explain." Something like surprise crossed his features before he masked it. "You're very forthright, Ms. Morgan. I found it saves time," she said, maintaining eye contact despite the intimidating setting, "especially when addressing a potential problem." "And you believe there is a problem to address?" Eliza took a measured breath. "Mr. Blackwood, I've been in the hospitality industry long enough to know that appearances matter. A staff member being caught in a compromising position on security footage is certainly not the image the Lumiere wants to project. I understand that, and I take full responsibility for not being more careful." "Compromising position," he repeated, his expression unreadable. "Is that how you would characterize it?" "I was changing my uniform after an accident with a water delivery," she clarified, determined to maintain her professional tone. "I should have used more discretion, perhaps found a more private location. For that lapse in judgment, I apologize." Dominic studied her for a long moment, his gaze so penetrating that Eliza had to resist the urge to shift in her seat. "Ms. Morgan, let me be clear," he finally said. "You did nothing wrong. If anyone should apologize, it's the Lumiere management for not properly briefing new staff on which areas are under surveillance. Or better yet, providing changing facilities that aren't monitored." The response was so unexpected that Eliza momentarily lost her carefully prepared composure. Thank you for saying that. But then, if I may ask, why am I here?" Dominic rose from his desk and moved to the floor-to-ceiling windows, his back to her as he gazed out at the city below. The morning light outlined his tall figure, creating an almost cinematic silhouette against the glass. "Your personnel file is impressive," he said, seemingly changing the subject. 6 years in the industry, consistently excellent performance reviews, a reputation for handling difficult situations with exceptional grace. Your previous employers described you as unflappable and the person you want in charge when things go wrong. He turned to face her again. "What your file doesn't explain is why someone with your qualifications and experience spent 3 years as an assistant manager at the Westbrook before applying to the Lumiere. Most ambitious professionals in your position would have moved up sooner." The question caught Eliza off guard. She hadn't expected him to have reviewed her career trajectory so carefully, much less questioned it. "Life circumstances," she answered carefully. "Sometimes career advancement has to take a back seat to personal responsibilities." "Your mother's illness," he stated rather than asked. Eliza stiffened. That information wasn't in her personnel file. "You've been investigating me. I make it a point to understand the people who work for me," Dominic replied unapologetically, "especially those in positions of trust. And my mother's health history falls under that category? Your dedication to her care while maintaining your professional responsibilities speaks to your character, Ms. Morgan. It's relevant." Eliza felt a complex mixture of emotions: discomfort at having her private life examined, anger at the intrusion, and yet a reluctant appreciation for his recognition of what that period had cost her professionally. "Yes," she finally acknowledged. "I stayed at the Westbrook because the schedule allowed me to care for my mother during her cancer treatment. The management was understanding about my need for flexibility. And now that she's in remission, you're pursuing the career you've always wanted." "I'm pursuing the career I've always wanted," she corrected. "The timing is finally right." Dominic nodded, returning to his desk but remaining standing. "The reason I asked you here today, Ms. Morgan, is because I witnessed something unusual yesterday. Not just a staff member changing clothes, but a person who, when confronted with an unexpected vulnerability, responded with remarkable dignity." He paused, his gaze direct. "That kind of composure under pressure is rare. It suggests a quality of character that interests me far more than an impressive resume." Eliza felt oddly exposed, more so than during the actual incident. "I'm not sure I understand what you're saying, Mr. Blackwood. I'm saying that I have a proposition for you." He sat down again, leaning forward slightly. "The Blackwood Group is launching a new boutique hotel concept, Noir. It's designed to cater to a different clientele than our traditional properties. More intimate, more personalized, with an emphasis on creating unique experiences rather than standardized luxury." "I've heard rumors about the project," Eliza acknowledged, still uncertain where this was heading. "The first Noir will open in 3 months. We're still assembling the management team." His eyes held hers steadily. "I want you to be part of it." For the second time in their conversation, Eliza found herself completely blindsided. "I've been at the Lumiere for less than a week. And in that time, you've already demonstrated the exact qualities I'm looking for. Adaptability, grace under pressure, and an authentic presence that can't be taught in hospitality school. With all due respect, Mr. Blackwood, you've seen me for approximately 5 minutes on a security camera and 20 minutes in this office. That's hardly enough to make such an assessment." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "I've built a multi-billion-dollar business on my ability to recognize potential, Ms. Morgan. Sometimes 5 minutes is all it takes." Eliza took a moment to process what was happening. "What exactly are you offering?" "Assistant General Manager for the flagship Noir property, with the understanding that you would transition to General Manager within the first year, assuming the concept proves successful." The position he was describing would typically require at least another 5 years of career advancement from where she currently stood. It was the kind of opportunity that could change the entire trajectory of her professional life. "Why me?" she asked directly. "There must be dozens of more qualified candidates within your organization. Qualified on paper, perhaps." Dominic rose again, moving around the desk to lean against its edge, reducing the formal distance between them. "But Noir isn't about following the standard luxury hotel playbook. It's about creating something authentic in an industry increasingly defined by carefully manufactured experiences." He studied her with that penetrating gaze. "Yesterday, in that unguarded moment, you showed me something real. That's what Noir needs. Someone who understands that true luxury isn't about gold fixtures or thread counts, but about genuine human connection." Eliza stood as well, unwilling to remain seated while he loomed above her. "Mr. Blackwood, while I'm flattered by your offer, I have to wonder if there isn't something else at play here. Meaning that men in positions of power don't typically offer extraordinary opportunities to women they've seen in states of undress without expecting something in return. If you've ever had your intentions questioned or felt judged based on assumptions rather than truth, hit that like button. Sometimes the most genuine opportunities come from unexpected places, and the biggest barriers to our success are the walls we build around ourselves based on past experiences. Stay with me to discover how this confrontation unfolds and what it reveals about both Eliza and Dominic." Instead of the offense or anger she half expected, Dominic's expression showed something like respect. A fair concern, given the realities of the world we live in. "Let me be absolutely clear. This offer is professional, with no strings attached or expectations beyond excellence in the role described. The compensation package, reporting structure, and performance metrics will all be formally documented and reviewed by HR." He moved back behind his desk, restoring the professional distance between them. "I understand your skepticism, Ms. Morgan. Take some time to consider the offer. Vivian will provide you with the complete details, including the project overview and compensation package. Review it, and if you have questions or concerns, we can discuss them." Eliza nodded, still processing the unexpected turn this meeting had taken. "And if I decline, then you continue as night manager at the Lumiere, with my best wishes for your success there." His tone was matter-of-fact. This isn't an ultimatum or a requirement. It's simply an opportunity one believe would benefit both you and the Blackwood Group. The intercom on his desk buzzed softly. "Mr. Blackwood, your 11 o'clock is here," came Vivian's voice. "Thank you, Vivian." He turned back to Eliza. "I hope you'll consider my offer seriously, Ms. Morgan. Opportunities to build something truly innovative don't come along often in this industry." As she left his office moments later, Eliza's mind was racing. The folder Vivian handed her, containing the details of a position she had never imagined would be within her reach for years, felt almost unreal in her hands. What had just happened? Had Dominic Blackwood really offered her a career-making position based on a glimpse of her character in an unguarded moment? Or was there something more to his interest? Something she couldn't yet see? The folder sat unopened on Eliza's kitchen table for 3 hours after she returned to her apartment. She had called in to the Lumiere, requesting a personal day, something she had never done in her professional life. The assistant manager had been understanding, if surprised. Now, as evening approached, she finally sat down and opened the folder containing Dominic Blackwood's unexpected offer. The contents were comprehensive. A detailed overview of the noir concept, architectural renderings of the first property, market analysis supporting the venture, and a proposed organizational structure with her potential position clearly outlined. The compensation package made her eyes widen. A base salary nearly triple what she currently earned, plus performance bonuses and equity options that could be life-changing if the concept succeeded. Everything was professionally presented, exactly as he had promised. There was nothing in the materials that suggested anything other than a legitimate business opportunity. And yet, Eliza couldn't shake her unease. Why her? What had Dominic Blackwood really seen in that moment of vulnerability that had prompted such an extraordinary offer? She reached for her laptop and began researching, first the noir concept, which had indeed been rumored in industry publications but with few concrete details, then Dominic Blackwood himself. The public information painted a consistent picture. Brilliant business strategist, intensely private, known for spotting industry trends years before competitors. He had taken his father's struggling hotel and transformed it into the cornerstone of an international luxury brand. With a reputation for excellence that commanded premium prices and fierce customer loyalty. Unlike many of his peers, Blackwood avoided the social circuit and rarely gave interviews. His personal life was largely a mystery, with only occasional mentions of brief relationships with accomplished women, a concert pianist, a human rights attorney, a renowned surgeon. No scandals, no harassment allegations, nothing that suggested he used his position to exploit women. Still, power created its own reality. A man like Dominic Blackwood was accustomed to getting what he wanted, to shaping the world according to his vision. What happened when someone said no to him? What happened if she accepted this position and then failed to meet his expectations? Eliza closed her laptop and moved to the window of her modest apartment. The view was nothing like the panoramic vista from Blackwood's office, just a slice of neighborhood life. People returning from work, a couple walking their dog, the corner market with its cheerful awning. This was the life she had carefully built after years of sacrifice and hard work. Taking care of her mother through cancer treatment had delayed her career advancement, but she had no regrets. Now, with her mother in remission and her new position at the Lumiere, things were finally falling into place according to her own careful plan. Dominic Blackwood's offer would accelerate that plan dramatically, but at what cost? Would accepting mean surrendering control of her carefully plotted course to the gravitational pull of a man whose power and presence were undeniably disruptive? Her phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. "Ms. Morgan, this is Dominic Blackwood. I realize my offer today was unexpected. If you have questions or concerns, I'm available to discuss them at your convenience. No pressure, just an open line of communication." Eliza stared at the message, surprised that he had reached out personally rather than through his assistant. The text was professional, respectful of boundaries, yet the mere fact of it, the direct connection to a man worth billions, felt strangely intimate. After careful consideration, she replied, "Thank you for the offer and the information. I'm reviewing it thoroughly. I do have questions, but they require more than a text exchange. Would tomorrow be possible?" His response came almost immediately. Tomorrow works. Name the time and place that's comfortable for you. The ball was in her court, a small but significant acknowledgement of the power imbalance between them. She considered suggesting a public place, a cafe or restaurant where the setting would reinforce professional boundaries. But something told her this conversation needed more privacy than a public venue would allow. The Lumiere has a small conference room off the mezzanine level. 2 p.m. I'll be there, came his simple reply. Setting down her phone, Eliza returned to the folder of materials. Whatever Dominic Blackwood's true motivations, she would approach tomorrow's meeting fully prepared, with pointed questions and clear boundaries. If this opportunity was genuine, it could transform her career and her life. If it wasn't, well, she had faced more difficult challenges than saying no to a powerful man. What she couldn't quite explain, even to herself, was why the prospect of seeing him again created a flutter of anticipation that had nothing to do with professional opportunity and everything to do with those penetrating indigo eyes that seemed to see past her carefully constructed professional facade. If you've ever stood at a crossroads, facing an opportunity that seemed too good to be true, give this video a thumbs up. We all face moments when we must decide whether to trust our instincts or protect ourselves from potential disappointment. Comment below if you've ever had to make a leap of faith in your career or personal life. The Lumiere's mezzanine-level conference room was designed for discreet business meetings. Elegant but understated, with comfortable seating, excellent acoustics, and privacy glass that could be adjusted from transparent to opaque with the touch of a button. Eliza had arrived 30 minutes early to prepare the space and herself, arranging water and coffee service, reviewing her notes and centering her thoughts. At precisely 2 p.m., there was a quiet knock at the door. When she opened it, Dominic Blackwood stood alone. No assistant, no entourage, just the man himself in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that somehow looked both formal and relaxed on his tall frame. "Ms. Morgan," he greeted her, his deep voice carrying that same resonance she had noticed in his office. "Thank you for making time to meet. Mr. Blackwood." She stepped aside to let him enter. "Thank you for accommodating my request." As he moved past her into the room, she caught the subtle scent of his cologne, something woodsy and complex that suited him perfectly. It was an oddly intimate detail to notice, and Eliza quickly redirected her focus to the business at hand. "Please have a seat," she said, gesturing to the conference table. "Would you like coffee?" "Black, thank you." He settled into a chair, his posture relaxed yet commanding, as if any space he occupied naturally became his domain. Eliza poured coffee for them both, using the familiar ritual to gather her thoughts. When she sat across from him, she was composed and ready. "I've reviewed the materials you provided," she began. "The noir concept is intriguing. A boutique experience with the backing of the Blackwood infrastructure could fill a significant gap in the market." "But you have reservations," he observed, those perceptive eyes missing nothing. "Several," she acknowledged. "First, while the position you're offering is extraordinary, it's also a significant leap from my current role. What makes you confident I could handle such a transition?" Dominic took a sip of his coffee before answering. "Experience can be gained. Character is intrinsic. The noir concept requires someone who understands that authentic connection is the ultimate luxury. Your handling of the locker room incident demonstrated exactly that quality, authenticity under pressure. That seems like a rather limited data point for such a significant decision. Perhaps, but in my experience, it's often the unguarded moments that reveal the most about a person." He set his cup down carefully. "Tell me, Ms. Morgan, what made you stay at the Westbrook for 3 years when you clearly had the talent to advance more quickly?" Eliza hesitated, weighing how much of her personal life to share. "As you already know, my mother was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer 4 years ago. The Westbrook offered me a schedule that allowed me to take her to treatments, care for her during the worst days, and still maintain my career. Other opportunities would have required relocations or hours that weren't compatible with her needs." "And you never resented that sacrifice?" "It wasn't a sacrifice," she said firmly. "It was a choice. My mother raised me alone, working 2 jobs to give me opportunities she never had. When she needed me, there was no question of what mattered more. Something shifted in Dominic's expression. A softening around the eyes, a subtle change that made him seem suddenly more human. "My father died when I was 22, he said unexpectedly. The hotel was failing, and he'd mortgaged everything to keep it afloat. The day after his funeral, 3 different advisors told me to sell it, take what little I could get, and move on. But you didn't. No, it was all he had built, all he had to leave behind. I couldn't let it disappear." He looked down at his coffee, then back at her. "We make choices based on values that others might not understand. That doesn't make them sacrifices." The moment of shared understanding hung between them, creating a connection that felt surprisingly genuine. Eliza found herself seeing Dominic Blackwood not just as a billionaire CEO, but as someone who had also faced difficult choices and remained true to his own values. "My second reservation," she continued, bringing the conversation back to professional ground, "concerns the nature of your interest. You said you saw something in me that day in the locker room. I need to understand exactly what that means." Dominic leaned back slightly, considering her question. "The luxury hotel industry is built on illusion, Ms. Morgan. We create perfect environments where nothing is ever out of place, where staff anticipate needs before guests even recognize them, where every interaction is scripted and polished to a high shine. That's the definition of 5-star service," Eliza pointed out. "It is, and it's becoming increasingly hollow." His voice took on a passionate edge that she hadn't heard before. "Today's most discerning travelers don't want more gold leaf or higher thread counts. They want authentic experiences, genuine connections. They're tired of perfection that feels manufactured. And you think I can provide that? I think you understand it instinctively. When you realized you were being observed in that locker room, you had a choice: to panic, to hide, to flee. Instead, you faced the moment with dignity and authenticity. You owned your vulnerability rather than pretending it didn't exist." He leaned forward slightly. "That's exactly the philosophy I want to build Noir around. Not the pretense of perfection, but the beauty of authentic experience." Eliza studied him, trying to discern any hint of insincerity in his words. "And if I accept this position, what exactly would you expect from me?" "Initially, to help shape the service philosophy of the brand. To train staff not just in technical skills, but in creating genuine connections with guests. Eventually, to run the flagship property with that same philosophy." He held her gaze steadily. "Nothing more, nothing less. And if it doesn't work out? If your assessment of my abilities proves incorrect, then we part ways professionally with appropriate severance and references. No drama, no repercussions." He smiled slightly. "Contrary to what you might believe, Ms. Morgan, I don't punish people for honest effort that doesn't yield the expected results. I only take issue with those who don't try or who pretend to be something they're not." There was something in his directness, in the clarity of his vision, that resonated with Eliza despite her lingering skepticism. The Noir concept aligned with her own beliefs about what truly mattered in hospitality. Not the mechanical perfection of service, but the human connection that made guests feel genuinely seen and valued. "I have one more question," she said. "Why did you watch? When you saw me enter that locker room, why didn't you immediately switch to another camera feed?" The question clearly caught him off guard. For the first time in their interactions, Dominic Blackwood looked momentarily uncertain. "I was about to," he said after a brief pause. "But then you looked directly at the camera, and there was something in that moment, a recognition, a challenge, that made me pause. By the time I processed what was happening, you were already handling the situation with such remarkable composure that I found myself impressed." He shook his head slightly. "It wasn't voyeurism, Ms. Morgan. It was recognition of something rare." Eliza considered his answer, weighing its sincerity against her instincts. In her years in the hospitality industry, she had developed a finely tuned ability to read people, to sense when they were being genuine versus when they were performing. Everything in Dominic's manner suggested honesty, uncomfortable honesty perhaps, but honesty nonetheless. "I need time to think," she finally said. "This isn't a decision I can make impulsively." Of course. He reached into his jacket and produced a business card, sliding it across the table to her. My personal number is on the back. When you've made your decision, call me directly, regardless of what that decision is. As he stood to leave, he added, For what it's worth, Ms. Morgan, I believe you would excel in this role. Not because I want you to, but because everything in your history suggests you rise to challenges rather than shrinking from them. After he left, Eliza remained in the conference room, turning his card over in her fingers. The simple white cardstock with its embossed lettering felt weighty with possibility, and with risk. The rational part of her mind catalogued all the reasons to be cautious, the unusual circumstances of the offer, the dramatic leap in responsibility, the inherent power imbalance between them. But another part of her, the part that had worked double shifts to put herself through school, that had balanced her mother's care with her career ambitions, that had never taken the easy path when the right one was harder, recognized the opportunity for what it was. A chance to prove what she had always believed about herself. That evening, Eliza sat beside her mother on the worn but comfortable couch in the small apartment they still shared. At 62, Lucia Morgan remained vibrant despite the toll cancer treatment had taken on her body. Her once dark hair was now silver, cropped short in a stylish pixie cut that she'd adopted after chemotherapy, declaring that she might as well embrace the new me. You're unusually quiet tonight, Lucia observed, muting the cooking show they'd been half watching. Something on your mind? Eliza hesitated, then decided her mother had always been her best sounding board. I've been offered an incredible job opportunity, one that would change everything. But, Lucia prompted, hearing the unspoken reservation in her daughter's voice. But it came from an unexpected source in unusual circumstances, and I'm not sure if I should trust it or myself. Lucia turned to face her daughter fully. Tell me everything. And so Eliza did, starting with the water spill and ending with Dominic Blackwood's parting words that afternoon. She left nothing out, including her own conflicted reactions and the strange connection she felt despite her reservations. When she finished, Lucia was quiet for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. You know, she finally said, when I was pregnant with you, everyone told me I couldn't do it alone, that I should either marry your father, despite knowing he wasn't right for me, or consider other options. They all thought they knew better than I did what was possible. But you proved them wrong, Eliza said softly. I did, because I trusted myself more than I trusted their limitations. Lucia reached out to take her daughter's hand. The question isn't whether this man's offer is genuine, though my instinct says it is. The question is whether you believe in yourself enough to step into an opportunity that scares you. What if I fail? Then you fail having tried something extraordinary, rather than succeeding at something safe. Lucia squeezed her hand. You've spent 6 years proving yourself in this industry, and the last 4 taking care of me. Maybe it's time to let someone else recognize what I've always seen in you. Eliza felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. When did you get so wise? Cancer has a way of clarifying what matters, Lucia said with a small smile. And what matters is that you stop putting limits on yourself based on what you think you deserve. You deserve everything, Mihija. The only question is whether you're brave enough to reach for it. Later that night, after her mother had gone to bed, Eliza took out Dominic Blackwood's card again. The decision crystallized in her mind with sudden clarity. Whatever his reasons for offering her this opportunity, her reasons for accepting or declining should be based on her own assessment of her capabilities, not on fear or suspicion. She picked up her phone and dialed the number on the back of the card. It rang twice before his now familiar deep voice answered. Mr. Blackwood, she said, her voice steady. This is Eliza Morgan. I've made my decision. Have you ever noticed how the moments that change our lives often come disguised as ordinary decisions? If you're enjoying this story of unexpected opportunity and the courage it takes to embrace change, hit that like button and subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison for more stories that remind us how life's most meaningful connections often begin in the most unexpected ways. I'd like to accept your offer, Eliza continued, with 2 conditions. There was a brief pause before Dominic responded, I'm listening. First, I want a 6-month review clause in my contract. If either of us feels this isn't working, we part ways amicably with the severance terms you mentioned. That's reasonable, he agreed. And the second condition? Eliza took a deep breath. I want your word that this is strictly professional. That what you saw in that locker room truly was about my character and not anything else. You have it, Dominic said without hesitation. My interest in you is professional, Ms. Morgan, based on qualities I believe will make Noir successful. After a brief pause, he added, though I won't pretend I don't find you intriguing as a person. That would be disingenuous. The candor of his response caught her off guard. Thank you for your honesty. I found it saves time, he replied, echoing her own words from their first meeting with a hint of humor in his voice. Especially when building trust. They spoke for a few more minutes, arranging for her to meet with HR the following day to formalize the agreement. When the call ended, Eliza felt a curious mixture of excitement and trepidation. She had just agreed to step into a role that would challenge everything she thought she knew about herself and her capabilities. But more unsettling than the professional challenge was the lingering awareness of Dominic Blackwood himself, not just as her new employer, but as a man who had seen something in her that others had missed. A man whose penetrating gaze and unexpected vulnerability had somehow breached defenses she hadn't realized she'd built. Whatever came next, Eliza knew one thing with certainty. That accidental glance through a security camera had set in motion changes that would reshape her life in ways she couldn't yet imagine. 3 months later, Eliza stood in the lobby of the nearly completed Noir Hotel, watching as the final touches were put into place before the grand opening the following week. The space was unlike anything in the Blackwood portfolio, intimate rather than imposing, with warm lighting, natural materials, and an atmosphere that invited relaxation rather than awe. What do you think? Came Dominic's voice from behind her. She turned to find him observing her with that same intense focus she had come to recognize over the months they'd worked together. I think it's exactly what you envisioned. Luxurious without being ostentatious. Authentic without sacrificing. I think it's exactly what you envisioned. Luxurious without being ostentatious. Authentic without sacrificing quality. She gestured to the hand-carved reception desk made from reclaimed wood. Every element tells a story, invites connection. That was your influence, he acknowledged, moving to stand beside her. The storytelling aspect, making sure each piece has meaning beyond mere aesthetics. The past 3 months had been the most challenging and rewarding of Eliza's professional life. Dominic had kept his word about the nature of her role, involving her in every aspect of bringing Noir to life, from staff selection to design decisions to creating the service philosophy that would define the brand. What he hadn't warned her about was how closely they would work together. Unlike most CEOs who delegated projects to their teams, Dominic had been intimately involved in Noir's development, often working alongside Eliza late into the evening, debating details that most executives would consider beneath their notice. Through those long hours and intense discussions, a relationship had developed that defied easy categorization. Not quite friendship, definitely not romance, but something built on mutual respect and a shared vision that sometimes felt more intimate than either. The staff training is complete, she reported, shifting to professional ground. The soft opening for friends and family this weekend should give us a chance to work out any remaining issues before the official launch. And you'll stay on site during the soft opening? Of course. I want to be available for any problems that arise. She smiled slightly, though I doubt there will be many. The team you've assembled is exceptional. The team we've assembled, he corrected. Your instincts about people have proven as valuable as I expected. A comfortable silence fell between them as they both surveyed the space that had consumed their lives for the past quarter year. The late afternoon sun slanted through the skylights, casting a golden glow over the lobby's carefully curated furnishings. I never properly thanked you, Eliza said suddenly. Dominic turned to her, one eyebrow raised in question. For what? For seeing something in me that day. For taking a chance on someone who, on paper, wasn't qualified for this role. She met his gaze directly. Whatever your reasons, this opportunity has changed my life. "You've more than justified my decision," he replied. "The question is whether you feel it was the right choice for you." Eliza considered the question seriously. The past 3 months had been exhausting, often overwhelming, pushing her to limits she hadn't known she possessed. There had been moments of doubt, of wondering whether she was in over her head. But there had also been triumphs, breakthroughs, and a growing confidence in her own abilities that no amount of conventional career advancement could have provided. "It was," she said with certainty, "though not always an easy one. The worthwhile choices rarely are." His voice had softened, and for a moment, the professional distance between them seemed to diminish. "Eliza!" "Mr. Blackwood," interrupted a voice from across the lobby. They both turned to see Vivian approaching with a tablet in hand. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but the investors are waiting in the conference room for the final briefing." The moment, whatever it might have been, passed. Dominic straightened, his expression shifting back to its usual composed professionalism. "Thank you, Vivian. I'll be right there." He turned back to Eliza. "We'll continue this conversation later?" She nodded, watching as he crossed the lobby with that confident stride that somehow made even the simple act of walking look purposeful. Only when he had disappeared into the elevator did she release the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Whatever had almost happened just now, whatever he had been about to say, was probably better left unspoken. They had established a productive working relationship, one based on mutual respect and clear boundaries. Anything more would only complicate what was already a complex dynamic. Yet as Eliza returned to her office to finalize preparations for the weekend's soft opening, she couldn't quite shake the feeling that something had shifted between them, something that had been building gradually over the past 3 months, beneath the surface of their professional interactions. And she wasn't entirely sure she wanted to stop it. The soft opening weekend exceeded even Eliza's meticulous expectations. The carefully selected guests, a mixture of industry influencers, loyal Blackwood clients, and personal connections of the executive team, responded enthusiastically to Noir's unique approach to luxury hospitality. By Sunday evening, as the last guests departed, the staff was tired but exhilarated by the success. Eliza had spent the weekend in constant motion, observing interactions, making minor adjustments to service protocols, and personally ensuring that each guest experienced the authentic connection that was Noir's defining philosophy. Now, as she stood in the empty lobby after sending the exhausted staff home with her congratulations, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment tinged with something like wonder. 6 months ago, she had been a newly hired night manager at the Lumiere. Today, she had effectively run the successful launch of what industry insiders were already predicting would be the next evolution in luxury hospitality. "You should be proud," came Dominic's voice, once again finding her in a moment of reflection. "This weekend was everything we hoped for." She turned to find him leaning against the doorway to the bar, his tie loosened and jacket discarded, looking more relaxed than she had ever seen him. "We make a good team," she acknowledged. "Better than good." He pushed away from the doorframe and approached her. "Join me for a celebratory drink? You've earned it." The invitation seemed harmless enough, a professional celebration of their shared success. Yet something in his tone, in the way his eyes held hers, suggested this might be more than a simple acknowledgement of a job well done. "One drink," she agreed, following him into the bar. The space was intimate, designed to feel like a private club rather than a hotel amenity. Rich leather seating, subdued lighting, and a carefully curated selection of rare spirits behind the bar created an atmosphere of exclusive comfort. Dominic moved behind the bar with unexpected ease, selecting a bottle of aged scotch and 2 crystal glasses. "Do you mind? I sent the bartenders home. They've worked hard enough this weekend." "Not at all." Eliza settled onto one of the bar stools, watching as he poured 2 measures of amber liquid with the precision of someone who appreciated fine things. He handed her a glass, then came around to sit beside her rather than across the bar. "To Noir," he said, raising his glass, "and to the woman who brought its philosophy to life. To partnerships that exceed expectations," she countered, clinking her glass gently against his. The scotch was exceptional, warming her throat and spreading a pleasant heat through her tired body. For a few moments, they sat in comfortable silence, the shared accomplishment of the weekend creating a bubble of contentment around them. "I have a confession to make," Dominic said finally, setting his glass down and turning slightly to face her. Eliza felt a flutter of apprehension. "What kind of confession?" "When I first saw you on that security camera, my interest wasn't entirely professional." He held up a hand as she stiffened. "Not in the way you're thinking. I wasn't attracted to your physical vulnerability. I was drawn to your response to being seen." He looked down at his glass, turning it slowly between his fingers. "For most of my adult life, I've been surrounded by people who perform, who present carefully constructed versions of themselves designed to impress or placate me. Even in my personal relationships, I've never been entirely sure if people were responding to me or to what I represent." "The billionaire CEO," Eliza murmured, understanding dawning. "Exactly. But in that unguarded moment, when you realized you were being observed, there was no performance. Just authentic dignity and self-possession." He looked up, meeting her eyes with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Do you have any idea how rare that is? How compelling?" The confession hung between them, shifting the atmosphere from professional celebration to something far more personal. Eliza took another sip of her scotch, buying time to process what he was telling her. "So when you offered me this position, I meant everything I said about your professional qualifications and what you could bring to Noir," he assured her quickly. "But yes, there was a personal element too. I wanted to know if that authenticity extended to all aspects of your character, or if it was just a momentary glimpse." "And what's your verdict?" she asked, surprised by her own boldness. Dominic's gaze never wavered. "That you're the most genuinely yourself person I've ever met. That working with you these past 3 months has been not just professionally rewarding, but personally illuminating." The word choice was deliberate, she knew. Not enjoyable or pleasant, but illuminating, suggesting that her presence in his life had brought clarity, had revealed something he hadn't seen before. "Dominic," she said, using his first name for the first time. "What exactly are you saying?" "I'm saying that our professional relationship has been a success by any measure." He set his glass down decisively. "And I'm asking if you'd be open to exploring whether there might be more between us than that. If you've ever had a moment when the boundaries between professional and personal began to blur, when someone you respected suddenly became someone who made your heart race, hit that like button. And if you're wondering whether Eliza will take this leap of faith or protect the career she's worked so hard to build, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison to find out what happens next in this story of unexpected connection." Eliza felt as though the air had suddenly become thinner, making it difficult to draw a full breath. The question she had been carefully avoiding for weeks had finally been asked directly, leaving no room for comfortable ambiguity. "You're my employer," she said, stating the obvious obstacle first. "Technically, the Blackwood Group is your employer. And as of yesterday's board meeting, you've been officially promoted to General Manager of Noir, reporting directly to the board rather than to me." A small smile touched his lips. "I anticipated this conversation might happen eventually. I wanted to ensure there would be no power imbalance if it did." The revelation that he had restructured her position to remove the direct reporting relationship between them was both touching and slightly unsettling. It showed forethought, consideration for her professional standing, but also a confidence that this moment would come. "There would still be complications," she pointed out. "People would talk. They might question whether I earned my position." "People always talk," he countered. "The question is whether we let their assumptions dictate our choices." Eliza studied him, seeing beyond the confident exterior to the vulnerability beneath. Dominic Blackwood, for all his wealth and power, was taking a risk here, opening himself to rejection, to the possibility that she didn't feel the same connection he did. And the truth was she did feel it, had felt it growing over the months they'd worked together, in the way he listened to her ideas with genuine interest, in the respect he showed for her perspective even when it differed from his own, in the rare moments when his carefully maintained composure slipped to reveal the man beneath the CEO. "I don't make personal decisions impulsively," she said finally. Just as I didn't accept your professional offer without consideration. I wouldn't expect you to. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and covered her hand with his. The simple contact sent a current of awareness through her that had nothing to do with professional respect. Take all the time you need. I've learned patience is often rewarded with the things that matter most. The warmth of his hand on hers, the intensity of his gaze, the intimacy of the moment. All of it threatened to overwhelm Eliza's carefully maintained composure. She gently withdrew her hand, needing physical distance to think clearly. I should go, she said, standing. It's been a long weekend, and we both need rest before the official opening. Dominic nodded, accepting her retreat without protest. Of course. He stood as well, maintaining a respectful distance. Whatever you decide, Eliza, nothing changes professionally. You've earned your position, and my respect, entirely on your own merit. As she gathered her things to leave, he added quietly, For what it's worth, I've never done this before. Pursued a personal relationship with someone in my professional circle. That should tell you something about how unique our connection is, at least from my perspective. The admission stayed with Eliza long after she left the hotel, following her home like a shadow that couldn't be shaken. In her small apartment, with her mother already asleep, she found herself standing at the same window where she had contemplated his job offer 3 months earlier. The parallels weren't lost on her. Once again, Dominic Blackwood had offered her something unexpected, something that could change the course of her life. Once again, she found herself weighing potential against risk, opportunity against caution. But this time, the stakes felt infinitely higher. A career could be rebuilt if things went wrong. A heart was another matter entirely. The official opening of Noir was a triumph by any measure. Press coverage was extensive and overwhelmingly positive, with industry publications praising the concept as revolutionary and the future of luxury hospitality. Bookings were solid for months in advance, with a waiting list growing for peak periods. Through it all, Eliza and Dominic maintained their professional rapport, their interactions during the launch events giving no hint of the personal question that hung unresolved between them. If anything, they worked together more seamlessly than ever, each anticipating the other's needs and thoughts with an almost uncanny synchronicity. A week after the opening, with operations running smoothly under her leadership, Eliza finally felt ready to address what had been left unfinished that night in the bar. She sent Dominic a simple text, "Dinner tonight? My place. 8 p.m. His reply came moments later, "I'll be there." The invitation to her home rather than a restaurant was deliberate, a choice to meet on her territory, in the modest apartment she shared with her mother, rather than in the rarefied world he typically inhabited. If they were to explore a personal relationship, she wanted him to see her life as it truly was, not just the professional persona she presented at Noir. Lucia, informed of the dinner guest, had tactfully arranged to spend the evening with her sister across town, giving Eliza and Dominic privacy while making it clear she expected to hear all about it later. At precisely 8 p.m., the doorbell rang. Eliza, who had changed from her work clothes into a simple blue dress that she hoped struck the right balance between casual and special, took a deep breath before opening the door. Dominic stood there holding a small bouquet of wildflowers rather than the expected roses or orchids, a choice that suggested he had given thought to what might please her rather than defaulting to conventional luxury. He too had changed from his business attire into dark jeans and a cashmere sweater that made him look more approachable, more human. "These reminded me of you," he said, offering the flowers. Beautiful without trying to be. The simple sincerity of the gesture and words touched her more deeply than any grand romantic gesture could have. "Thank you," she said, accepting them with a genuine smile. "Please, come in." As she led him into the apartment, she was acutely aware of how different it was from his world. The comfortable but worn furniture, the family photos on the walls, the small kitchen where she had prepared a simple meal rather than ordering in from an expensive restaurant. If Dominic noticed the contrast between her home and the luxury he was accustomed to, he gave no sign of it. Instead, he moved through the space with genuine interest, pausing to look at photos, asking questions about the stories behind certain items, making himself at home in a way that put her at ease. Over dinner, a homemade paella that had been her mother's specialty and that Eliza had perfected over years of practice. They talked not about work or the hotel, but about their lives, their backgrounds, the experiences that had shaped them. Dominic spoke of his father's struggle to keep the original hotel afloat, of the lessons in perseverance he had learned watching a man refuse to give up on his dream even as banks threatened foreclosure. He shared stories of his early days taking over the business, of the mistakes he'd made and the hard-won wisdom that had come from them. In turn, Eliza told him about growing up with a single mother who had sacrificed everything to give her opportunities, about working her way through school, about the values of hard work and integrity that had guided her career choices. She spoke of her mother's cancer diagnosis and the perspective it had given her on what truly mattered in life. As the evening progressed, the initial awkwardness faded, replaced by a deepening connection that felt both new and somehow familiar, as if they were remembering each other rather than getting to know one another for the first time. After dinner, they moved to the small balcony overlooking the neighborhood, the night air cool but pleasant. Standing side by side, looking out at the ordinary street below rather than the spectacular city views from his penthouse, Eliza finally addressed what had brought them here. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began, "about exploring whether there might be more between us than our professional relationship." Dominic turned to face her, his expression open, waiting. "I've spent most of my adult life focused on two things: taking care of my mother and building my career. I haven't made much room for personal relationships." She met his gaze directly. "The truth is, I'm not entirely sure I know how to do this. How to balance professional boundaries with personal connection, especially with someone like you." "Someone like me?" he questioned softly. "Someone whose world is so different from mine. Someone who could have anyone he wanted." She gestured to the modest apartment around them. "This is my reality, Dominic. Not penthouses and private jets." He was quiet for a moment, considering her words. "Do you know what I saw that day on the security camera? Not just dignity under pressure, but a woman completely comfortable in her own skin. Someone who didn't need external validation to know her worth." His voice deepened with emotion. "Do you have any idea how rare that is in my world? How refreshing." He took a step closer, still maintaining a respectful distance. "I'm not interested in you despite our different backgrounds, Eliza. I'm drawn to you because you're grounded in something real. Something I lost touch with years ago until you reminded me it existed." The sincerity in his voice, in his eyes, made something shift inside her. A wall beginning to crumble, a door starting to open. "I'm scared," she admitted, the words barely above a whisper. "Not of you, but of what happens if this doesn't work. I've built something at Noir that matters to me." "As have I," he agreed. "Which is why I restructured your position, not just for appearances, but to protect what you've built, regardless of what happens between us personally." He reached out slowly, taking her hand in his. "I can't promise this will be easy, or that we won't face challenges. But I can promise that your professional standing is secure, no matter what." His thumb traced gentle circles on her palm, sending ripples of awareness up her arm. "What I'm asking for is a chance, Eliza. A chance to discover if what I've felt growing between us these past months is as extraordinary as I believe it to be." In that moment, standing on her small balcony with the man who had seen her, truly seen her, in a way no one else ever had, Eliza made her decision. She had spent her life being careful, responsible, putting others' needs before her own. Perhaps it was time to take a risk for herself, to reach for something that scared her precisely because it mattered. "Yes," she said simply. The single word hung between them for a heartbeat before Dominic closed the distance, his free hand coming up to gently cup her cheek. "May I?" he asked, his gaze dropping to her lips. In answer, Eliza rose slightly on her toes, meeting him halfway as his lips found hers in a kiss that was both tender and electric, cautious and certain all at once. His arms encircled her waist as hers wound around his neck, the connection between them deepening as the kiss continued, expressing everything words had failed to capture. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. Worth the wait, he murmured. Eliza smiled, feeling a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. This won't be simple, she warned. Ever practical even in this moment of connection. The best things rarely are, he replied, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with gentle fingers. But I've built a career on turning complicated visions into reality. I think we can figure this out together. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms on her modest balcony, Eliza thought about the strange, winding path that had led them here, from a water-soaked uniform to a security camera to a life-changing job offered to this moment of genuine connection. One accidental glance had changed everything, setting in motion a series of events neither of them could have predicted. But perhaps that was the nature of life's most meaningful turning points. They rarely announced themselves in advance, instead arriving disguised as ordinary moments that only revealed their significance in retrospect. 6 months later, Eliza stood in her office at Noir, reviewing the quarterly performance reports with satisfaction. The hotel had exceeded all projections, establishing itself as the new standard in luxury hospitality and prompting the board to approve expansion of the concept to 3 additional locations. A knock at her door drew her attention. Dominic stood there, a familiar warmth in his eyes as he took in the sight of her. "Ready for the board presentation?" he asked. "More than ready," she replied with confidence. Their professional relationship had evolved into a smooth partnership, each respecting the other's domain while collaborating seamlessly where their responsibilities overlapped. Their personal relationship had deepened as well, finding its rhythm despite the challenges of their different worlds and public scrutiny. They had established boundaries that protected both their professional credibility and their private connection, learning to navigate between CEO and general manager in public while being simply Dominic and Eliza in private. As they walked together toward the boardroom, Dominic's hand brushed against hers briefly, a small, private gesture of connection that went unnoticed by the staff they passed. "By the way," he said casually, "I've been meaning to tell you, we're upgrading the staff facilities at all Blackwood properties. Private changing rooms with no surveillance cameras." A hint of mischief glinted in his eyes. "Can't have any more accidental glances changing people's lives, can we?" Eliza laughed, the sound bright and genuine. "I don't know," she replied, matching his playful tone. "That particular accident worked out rather well, all things considered." His expression softened as they paused outside the boardroom doors. "The best accident of my life," he said quietly, just for her ears. And as they entered the boardroom together, ready to present their shared vision to the board, Eliza reflected on how sometimes the moments that seem most exposing, most vulnerable, can become the catalysts for our greatest strength. How being truly seen, not for the image we project, but for who we authentically are, can open doors we never imagined possible. One accidental glance had indeed changed everything. But it was what came after, the courage to stand tall, to embrace opportunity, to risk vulnerability again in a different way, that had transformed that moment from a potential disaster into the beginning of something extraordinary. If the story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever experienced a moment that seemed embarrassing or uncomfortable at the time, but led to an unexpected blessing? Remember that sometimes our most vulnerable moments can become our greatest opportunities, if we have the courage to face them with dignity and an open heart.